Well, good evening, everybody. So good to have you back for our midweek live stream. I am excited about the new series. I am sitting here with Pastor Daniel Sansot, otherwise called P. Dan to the students, and some of you others, I guess they can call you whatever they want, right?
Absolutely.
As long as it's not too mean. Right?
That's right.
P. Dan. We'll go with P. Dan today.
That'll work.
All right. So the new series is this. We get so many questions throughout the week. Often, some weeks more than others, obviously, but we get emails. Sometimes I'll personally get an email. I'm sure you get emails as a youth pastor, or you get conversations probably more than emails. And then our pastors get emails. You guys approach us in the hallway. So we have a lot of just different conversations. And a lot of times those questions are posed to us, and we're like, man, that would be a good question for a lot of people, because a lot of you have probably the same question. You just never asked the question. And so we thought that would be a really great series to start. So that's kind of what we're doing here tonight. And this is kind of just a teaser. We're going to jump into this, but then we're going to take a Christmas break. We'll come back the first week of January, and I'll remind you of that at the end. And if you miss any of these discussions, they're always going to be in our midweek video vault on our website, thebridgeonline.cc. Just click that link. It'll have every discussion listed there. You just click on the one you missed. Maybe you see a question. It's like, oh, I missed that week. I would really like to know the answer to that. So now we don't always profess to know everything, I don't think. But we will give you our best take on Scripture, because that is the best that we know that we can do. So we might have a different pastor up here every week. It might even be a growth group leader or something like that, somebody that we feel like could speak into a given subject. So, but we were talking about this one at staff meeting this week, and it was a good one. And we thought, since it's Christmas season, and we read the Christmas story a lot, someone posed a question actually to Pastor Patrick, emailed him, and it was a really good question. So we talked about it. I'm like, that'd be a good one to just throw out for Christmas. We'll see if we can knock this out and then go just have a good Christmas. But here's the question. P. Dan is going to answer it for us and give us so much clarity on it. The question was this. I don't know if I'm missing something or not, but Luke 2, verse 7 says, Mary had her baby and laid him in the manger because there was no room in the inn. But then in Matthew 2:11, it says that the wise men followed the star, and on going into the house, they saw the child with Mary and fell down and worshiped him. These seem to be contradictory, so which is it? Because in one scene, it talks about them being in a manger and some kind of what we assume is a barn or something like that. And then the other one says he's going into a house. So which is it?
Well, so it's actually a really good question, because there do seem to be some contradictions between the two authors sometimes, and we want to try to bring some clarity to that. To just kind of summarize it, I kind of feel like the question is, look, was Jesus in a manger or was Jesus in a house? And obviously we know that a manger is a feeding trough for animals, and so you wouldn't expect that someone's going to have that in their house. So what's going on here? What are these authors trying to show us? What kind of picture are they trying to paint? So first of all, traditionally we have a lot of Christmas ideas that have kind of formulated over the years. Some of them have come by people trying to mesh the two stories together and try to come up with some chronological idea of what took place. But honestly, a lot of our Christmas traditions come from Christmas carols. They come from songs. Yeah. And so there's a lot of things where the songs are not actually biblically accurate, even though they make for a really great story.
That happens in contemporary Christian music, by the way, too. You got to be careful what you're listening to.
That's very true. It's very true. So a lot of times in our homes, we have these nativity scenes that are set up. We have a stable or some kind of barn, and we have all of the Christmas characters and animals that are gathered around that one place. And well, the truth is that they were not all at the same place at the same time, and that's kind of what we get here when we look at Matthew and Luke together. We understand that these are two authors, separate from one another. They are telling the same story, but from different perspectives. And both of these guys are very detailed people. Matthew was a tax collector, very detailed with where his decimal points were and things like that. But Luke was a doctor, and he was very particular about his details. But because they come from two separate walks of life, they still come from a different perspective. And so they're sharing with us their perspective. So with that in mind, we'll take a look at some of the things that are going on here.
And in Luke's version, really, I guess he wasn't really a disciple, was he? Or
Nope.
was he a disciple? That's right.
Yeah.
And then so Matthew he was directly a follower of Jesus. So Luke, I guess, gave more the perspective of a Gentile, someone like us.
Yes.
It's not Jewish. So,
That's very true. So, first of all, let's look at a couple of the similarities. Let's look at some things where these guys do agree, because that's what's really important. Number one, they both teach us that Jesus was the Messiah. They both teach us that Jesus was born of a virgin. They both teach us that Mary was his earthly mother and Joseph was his earthly father, and that both of them were at the time residing in Nazareth, which was a town in Galilee. And then they both agree that Jesus was actually born in Bethlehem, and that at some point, Mary and Joseph and Jesus returned to Nazareth. These are some of the highlights where these guys, they obviously agree on the details.
Right.
Now, that's not to say that they disagree on other details. It's just to say those are the things where we know these stories line up very easily just based upon what they've given us. So, the subject of the manger or the house, when you look at the passage in Luke, it's referring to the shepherds. And the angels appear to the shepherds, and they give them the word that the Messiah has been born. And they tell him, you can find him in a manger, wrapped in swaddling clothes. And so that's where we get this picture of Jesus, the Messiah as a baby, being laid in a feeding trough.
So this was when Jesus was an infant.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is at his birth, his time of his birth.
I don't want to jump ahead of you. Was Matthew, do you think that was talking about when he was an infant still?
No, I really don't think so. And,
Okay,
and there's
I don't
some
think so
reason
either.
for that.
Yep.
And so let's go to Matthew for just a second.
Okay.
Matthew chapter 2, and let's look at the story of the Magi. It says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east, and we have come to worship him. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. Can I just point out that all of Jerusalem was disturbed by what the Magi had to say in what we suppose was a private meeting with Herod? The truth is that these guys probably entered into town with a lot of pomp and circumstance, okay? There was a lot of parade-type activity that surrounded their coming into Jerusalem, bringing a lot of attention to their arrival. And then here they are asking the question, saying, the King of the Jews, obviously everyone's going to be on edge.
Now, let me ask you this. The Magi, when I see that word Magi, some versions, I think they'll call them different names. But this is, I think, where we get the song, the old song, We Three Kings of Orient Are.
Yeah.
And when you hear the same thing, We Three Kings of the Orient Are, I think of Oriental people, Chinese people. And
Right.
they come from the east, so they must be Chinese, right? What do you think to that?
Well, historically, we really believe that they came from Persia, somewhere right around Persia.
Maybe the leftovers from the Daniel days.
Yes, exactly. That's
yeah.
exactly right. So Daniel was actually a Magi. And a lot of what these guys knew in expectation of a Messiah was actually taught to them
Right.
by Daniel.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
Yeah.
So the truth is, though, they weren't kings. Okay, we love that song, and it's a great song, but that's an example of where our Christmas carols
stretched a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the truth is that they were mathematicians, they were astrologers. These guys studied the stars, and I believe that that's one of the reasons why God gave them a star to find Jesus. He was speaking their language to them by putting that star in the heavenlies because it was a language they already understood. So.
Can I make a little insert here? I did a no-no, and I referenced a person that I didn't tell our viewers that everybody may not know what Daniel did. And Daniel was in that era of Jewish people who were basically exiled to Babylon, which is modern-day Iraq. Persia became part of that kingdom as well eventually. So this is a bunch of Jewish people that were expedited over there, and then they ended up having a civilization there. Then eventually they started coming back, but a lot of them stayed because they ended up having a life over there. and they stayed. So that's what I was referring to, and I said, Daniel, that was several hundred years earlier. So I apologize. I wanted to make sure our viewers understand what I was referring to there. But go ahead.
Absolutely.
Now. Go ahead.
So anyway, these guys, they weren't kings as in royalty, but they were treated kind of like royalty. They were very wealthy. They were very well educated. And so in the grand scheme of their culture, they were actually kind of treated like royalty. But if you've ever seen the movie Aladdin, where Aladdin comes into town and he's riding the elephant or whatever, and they've got all the dancers, and I mean, that's almost a picture of what it might have been like for the Magi to enter in.
Magic carpets and everything.
I don't know about all that, but yeah. So anyway, so we'll pick it up here. It says, when he had called together all the people's chief priests and the teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, are by no means least among the rulers of Judea. For out of you will come a ruler who will be the shepherd of my people Israel. It says, then Herod called the Magi secretly. So now they're having a secret conversation with Herod. He called them in secretly and found out from them the exact time that the star had appeared. That is a huge clue for us. Right. When did this star appear that they began to follow? It says, he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and make a careful search for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I may too go and worship him. After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Then it says in verse 16, when Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years of age and under. That's another huge clue for us. Because as you were saying, when the shepherds showed up, Jesus was an infant. Right. But when the Magi come, Jesus is actually older. He's about toddler age. Right. And we get that because Herod looks at the Magi and he says, when did the star appear? When did you begin your journey? And they give him a timeline. Based upon that timeline, Herod does the math and says, well, if there's any possibility that I'm going to be able to wipe out this so-called king of the Jews, then I've got to take out every child that's 2 years of age and younger. If Jesus had been an infant, if this had been the night that Jesus was born, then Herod could have started with babies at 6 months and then gone down. Right. But because of their story and their account, their testimony, and then him being able to do the math, we get a different timeline.
Yeah, and it's not like today to where today we get, a baby's born, we get in the plane and we fly down and we're there that day. It took days, weeks, months, I guess, for the Magi to even get there.
Absolutely.
To travel through the desert or around the desert and all that.
So you're talking about a journey basically on foot from the Persian Empire down to Bethlehem, and it very well could have taken them. It could have taken them 2 years. It could have taken them well over a year to get to where Jesus was. And so by this time, instead of like the shepherds being there and being able to see a baby in a manger, we do have Magi who show up, and basically they find a toddler in a house. By this time, they've moved from the manger into a house now. And so that's kind of the time frame of what's happening here and why these two authors seem to contradict one another, but they're really not.
Not at all. Just
No.
two different times on the timeline.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so here's the truth. For those of us who have our wonderful nativity scenes set up at home on our mantles, and we have the shepherds on one side with all their sheep, and then we have the Magi on the other side with their camels and all of their stuff. The truth is that the Magi should probably still be on the other side of the room somewhere, because in that scene, that manger scene with the shepherds, the Magi are still on a journey. So it kind of makes it gives it a little bit of a different picture for us.
It does. And folks, the reason we're answering questions like this is just to help you on your faith journey. It's not to do anything more than
Absolutely.
because Google is so easy. It's so easy to hear skeptics these days. If you put in, with Christmas being out now, if you're on your computer, you're on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, if you have any friends in your following that says, oh, the Bible's not true because of, and then they put this in there, it's like, guess what? You'll know how to process that down. They're like,
right.
no, that's not true at all. So we live in an age that it's too easy to get data filled into our head. We're just trying to help you filter that data to answer questions that inevitably, if you haven't already come across now, you will at some point. And we're just I guess this class or this discussion time that we're going to be doing on Wednesdays is really, in a sense, sort of, not defending your faith, but help solidifying your faith in a world full of skeptics.
Absolutely.
Honestly. So I think that was a good benefit of just answering. It's a simple question that had a simple answer, in my opinion, and I think you did a great job unpacking it. And honestly, I hope you'll come do these again with me in a few weeks.
Thank you for letting me come. I enjoy it.
Yeah, you know what? We're going to stop there today. He answered the question, but come back to us in January. January 6th, we're going to start this again, and we're going to continue these discussions just like this. And if they lead to longer discussions, we'll do that. But we're going to try to get you in and out of here on Wednesdays, give you some nugget of information that we hope will help you in your walk of faith, help you to grow in your faith. Because let's face it, we get a lot of great teaching on Sundays and things like that. But sometimes these little questions may come to our heads, and we wrestle with them, but nobody ever really answers them. Right?
That's right.
And I think this will help us. So we want to hear from you. If you have a question that's sort of been pressing in the back of your mind, questions@thebridgeonline.cc. Send us the questions. We actually look at them as a staff, and we're like, oh, that would be a great one to tackle. Hey, I'll take that one. And you may hear from other pastors or leaders as well. So send us your questions. We really want to hear from you. You can send it to me directly, Shane@thebridgeonline.cc. But just send it, if you can, to questions@thebridgeonline.cc. That makes it easier for us to track and keep them. But Pete Ann, we'll have you back if that's cool, man. I would love to have you right back. It's been fun. You guys have an amazing Christmas, and just go be with your families, love on them, do unto others, do what Jesus would have done, and that is just love people, be the church, and the church loves, and the church helps, and the church serves. So you guys be blessed. Have an amazing rest of the year.